Welcome back. Hello, my name is Leire Carbonell and I'm a professor of interpretation, English into Spanish, at the Middlebury Institute of International Studies at Monterey, commonly known as MIIS.
And my name is Lauren Hammer-Aguilera, and I recently graduated from MIIS with a master's in translation and interpretation. My working languages are Spanish and English.
This is the second video that we have prepared to demo how we use the iPad and Apple Pencil in our simultaneous classes at MIIS. In my simultaneous classes, I always download the transcript of the speech in Notability on my iPad, and then I write my feedback and comments for students. Let's see an example. Imagine you are in class right now. What happens in class, whether in person or remotely, I play a speech for students, and then students interpret. Right while they are interpreting, I have my transcript in the iPad, and I am taking notes. And then I switch channels, so I can listen to all the students that I have in the class. So for example, here, you can see Alicia, and you can see that I gave her the color blue. So for this portion of the speech, I listen to Alicia, and this is the feedback that I have for her. Again, you can see important part of the speech, important parts, I have highlighted them in yellow because I think they are crucial for meaning, and they are very important for students and for technique, right? Then at that point, I switched channels, and then I listened to Marisol, and then you can see that I gave Marisol the color green. And this is the feedback that I have for Marisol. You can see some grammar here, omissions. And then again, as it happens in consecutive, we go over all this feedback for all the students in the class, because we always say that we can learn from each other. So this is exactly what we do in class for feedback. We go over the transcript, and we can see on the screen the comments that I have for everybody. Here we have Emma in purple, so exactly the same thing. We would talk about her solutions. We would talk about ways to improve her interpretation. Here we see numbers. I always highlight numbers in blue. We can see happy faces, good solutions, and then finally we have Rosie, and then we have the feedback for Rosie. So I think you can get the idea. When the class is over, I email the transcript to my students with my comments. Everything that we said in the video about consecutive interpretation applies here. As a professor, I end up with a centralized repository of all the speeches that we worked with in the classroom and my students' performance. You can also imagine how useful it is to teach sight translation and go over feedback with this technology. You should also know that as a professional conference interpreter, the iPad and the Apple Pencil have completely changed the way I work. I do not print any speeches or PowerPoint presentations anymore. Whenever I receive the preparation materials for a conference by email or any kind of cloud platform like Dropbox or Google Drive or iCloud, I download all documents directly to my Notability app in the iPad. I classify them by subject and divider, as we saw in the consecutive video, and then I start to prepare and document terminology. As I said before, this not only means that I do not have to print any presentation or speech anymore, which is wonderful because it helps the environment, but also I do not have to be stressed out about last-minute presentations or not having enough printed copies for all the booths. In addition, my notes on terminology and content stay in a centralized place for future conferences. Lauren, I know you have just graduated. Congratulations, by the way. As part of your program at MIIS, you had a class called Practicum, in which you interpreted in different venues as an interpreter in training. What was it like incorporating the iPad into the simultaneous booth as a student and interpreter in training?
Well, the iPad has really represented so much freedom for me in my simultaneous interpretation studies in general, in the practicum course specifically, like you just mentioned, and it's really aided my experience and ultimately my performance as a student in those courses. In our simultaneous courses, our professors really seek to prepare us for the professional world by simulating aspects of the professional experience. And this includes teaching us how to interpret with texts and with presentations that have slide decks. So an example of a speech with text could be the script of remarks that will be given by a head of state. And a lot of times these remarks are circulated to the interpreters beforehand. An example of a slide deck could be a presentation on finances of a company or some sort of private sector interpretation assignment for companies that are operating transnationally, for example. To make this exercise extra realistic in the MIIS context, the professors oftentimes send us these materials with a short amount of time to prepare them. Think sending them at 7 a.m. for a 10 a.m. class, or even sending them at 7 a.m. for an 8 a.m. class. While some of my other classmates have to spend that limited time running to print the slides or print the speeches themselves, the transcripts, or otherwise have to settle for pulling up the documents on their laptop without being able to mark them up, I simply press a couple buttons. I download the text or the slides to Notability, and in a matter of seconds, I'm already marking up the document itself. I don't need to take notes separately in a notebook, on my laptop, or anywhere else. Plus, I have all of the materials, like you said, stored in labeled, centralized folders within the app so that everything is in its place, nothing gets lost, and nothing takes up desk space. I've also found that an added bonus to the iPad is the fact that it acts as a second screen, and an internet-capable second screen at that. So it frees up my laptop for in-booth researching or terminology management, for example. And this is especially relevant right now when a lot of interpreters are interpreting remotely on web-based platforms. So their laptop screen is occupied with a kind of virtual booth dashboard setup. So it's really convenient to have the iPad as a second screen, as a second device to help manage the remote interpreting experience. I'd also like to show you an example, a concrete example of how I've used the iPad in the practicum course specifically that you mentioned. In the fall semester, I interpreted a course at MIIS called Career Management, and it prepares students in the translation, interpretation, and localization management programs for how to navigate their career once they're out in the workforce. And I received this slide deck at, I can see here, 11:20 a.m. and the class started at 12:15 p.m. So I had less than an hour to get this slide deck ready. And the topic for that specific day was going to be how to file taxes as a freelance translator or interpreter. And I was luckily able, thanks to my iPad, to spend the hour or less than an hour looking up how to say a lot of these finance-related, tax-related terms in Spanish, many of which I had never needed to know before. I was able to spend that hour looking up an accepted translation of a Benjamin Franklin quote so that when it came up, I would know how to say it smoothly. I was able to also highlight and mark up right in the slide deck itself the exact ways that I was going to render some of these complicated terms. Here with these numbers, I was able to indicate without writing it out how I was going to render the name of this survey, especially because Spanish has a different order of the way that it constructs phrases with nouns and adjectives. The order is often reversed, and this way when I'm going into Spanish, I can write right over it how I want to say the name of this survey, and instead of having the word survey come at the end like it would in English, encuesta, which is survey in Spanish, would come at the beginning. So there I can mark it up that I want to put this word first and say the rest of the words in that respective order. So I was really able to interpret this presentation very successfully because I was able to use that limited amount of time to do what the interpreter needs to do most, which is not running to a printer, but rather getting into the content and preparing what you don't know so that the client will never know that just an hour ago, you might not have known how to say that. And I found that this has helped me so much in the transition to the professional world, where I'm now taking freelance interpreting assignments, and I'm still new to the profession, but the client can never tell because I'm able to optimize my time and prepare myself as best as I can.
Thank you, Lauren. I couldn't agree more. Before we finish, one last comment. If you are wondering if you need any particular kind of iPad, well, any size will work as long as it is compatible with the Apple Pencil. Also, we are demoing the iPad, but principles are the same with any tablet or e-pencil. Just give it a try with what you've got and see how it goes. We will leave it here for now. This is just a small sample of the cutting-edge technologies that we use at MIIS and the way we are changing pedagogy and interpretation practices. If you have any questions, by all means, do not hesitate to contact us. We would love to hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you.